My aunt posted a story mocking me and tagged the whole family. So I replied publicly with a thread of receipts showing the tuition payments I had covered and watched the comments flip into a full-blown family argument. I, 32M, never imagined a Wednesday morning would end with me becoming the center of a family civil war, but there I was, staring at my phone screen with my coffee growing cold beside me. The notification had come through around 9. My aunt had posted something on social media and tagged what seemed like every breathing relative we had. I almost ignored it. Almost. But curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked through to see what warranted such a mass announcement. The post was a meme about entitled millennials who think the world owes them everything. Below it, she'd written a lengthy caption about how some people in the family had grown up spoiled and now couldn't handle real life without begging for handouts. She didn't mention my name directly, but the tags told the whole story. My parents, my siblings, my cousins, even extended family members I barely spoke to. And right there in the middle, my tag, glowing like a neon sign. My jaw tightened as I read through her words. She talked about people who acted superior despite being failures, about family members who took advantage of generosity and never learned to stand on their own 2 feet. The comments were already rolling in. Some relatives posted laughing emojis. Others added their own little jabs about younger generations. My cousin asked if she was talking about someone specific, and my aunt replied with a cryptic comment about how some people know exactly who they are. I sat there for a long moment, phone in hand, feeling heat rise up my neck. This wasn't the first time my aunt had taken shots at me, but it was the first time she'd done it so publicly, so deliberately. The woman had a talent for making people feel small, and she'd been practicing that talent on me since I was a teenager. The history between us was complicated. After my father died when I was 19, things in our family shifted. My aunt, his older sister, had always been the self-appointed matriarch, the one who decided who deserved support and who needed tough love. When I'd struggled to pay for college in those early years, she'd made it clear she thought I should drop out and get a real job instead of wasting time on a degree. She'd told my mother I was being coddled, that losing my father should have made me stronger, not weaker. What she didn't know, what almost nobody in the family knew, was that I'd eventually figured things out. I'd worked 2 jobs, finished my degree, and started a business that actually did well. Better than well. By the time I was 28, I was making more money than I'd ever thought possible. But I kept it quiet. I didn't flaunt it. I didn't need validation from people who'd written me off. But there was one person I had helped. My cousin, my aunt's daughter, had dreams of becoming a doctor. She'd gotten into a good medical school 3 years ago, but the tuition was astronomical. My aunt and her husband couldn't afford it. They'd taken out loans, maxed out credit cards, and were still coming up short. The stress was tearing their family apart. That's when my cousin reached out to me. She knew I'd done well, though I'd never discussed the specifics with anyone. She asked if I could lend her some money, just to cover 1 semester while they figured things out. She was desperate, embarrassed to even ask, but she didn't have anywhere else to turn. I'd thought about it for maybe 10 minutes before deciding to help. Not a loan. A gift. I told her not to worry about paying me back, that family should support each other when they could. But I made one request. I asked her not to tell anyone, especially not her mother. I knew my aunt would either refuse the help on principle or find some way to make it about her. My cousin agreed, grateful and relieved. Over the next 3 years, I'd quietly paid for her tuition. Every semester, like clockwork. She was in her final year now, on track to graduate in a few months. The total amount I'd covered was somewhere north of $180,000. I'd kept every receipt, every bank transfer confirmation, every email exchange. Not because I planned to use them, but because I kept good records of everything. Sitting there with my cold coffee and my aunt's post glowing on my screen, I realized those records were about to become very relevant. I opened my laptop and started gathering files. Bank transfers to the university, all clearly labeled with my cousin's student ID and my name as the payer. Emails from the bursar's office confirming payments. Receipts showing the exact amounts and dates. I organized them chronologically, making sure everything was clear and easy to follow. Then I started writing my response. I kept my tone calm and factual. I didn't attack my aunt directly or match her energy. I simply stated that I found her post interesting, given that I'd been quietly supporting a family member's education for the past 3 years. I explained that I'd covered medical school tuition not because I wanted recognition, but because I believed in helping family without making a spectacle of it. Then I attached the receipts. All of them. I uploaded the bank transfers, the payment confirmations, the emails. I made sure every document was visible and verifiable. And then, before I could second-guess myself, I posted it as a reply to her original post, making sure all the same people were tagged. I hit share and sat back, my heart pounding. For about 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then my phone started buzzing like it was having a seizure. The comments came flooding in. My uncle, my aunt's husband, was one of the first to respond. He asked if this was real, if I was actually the one who'd been paying for medical school. I confirmed it was true and provided additional documentation for anyone who wanted to verify. My mother called immediately, her voice a mixture of shock and confusion. She asked why I'd never told her, why I'd kept it secret. I explained that I'd wanted to help without creating drama, but apparently drama had found me anyway. My aunt went silent for about 10 minutes. Then she deleted her original post. But the internet is forever, and several relatives had already screenshotted everything. Someone reposted the whole exchange in the family group chat, and that's when things really exploded. My cousins started weighing in. Some thanked me for helping their sister, saying they'd always wondered how the tuition was getting paid. Others questioned why my aunt had posted something so cruel when I'd been supporting her daughter. My younger brother asked if I was secretly rich, and I told him I'd just been careful with money and business had gone well. My aunt finally responded. She claimed she hadn't been talking about me at all, that I was being paranoid and making everything about myself. She said posting the receipts was tacky and that real generosity didn't need to be announced to the world. Several relatives pointed out the irony of that statement coming from someone who'd just publicly mocked a family member. The argument spread like wildfire. My grandmother got involved, demanding to know why she was just now hearing about this. My aunt's siblings started questioning her judgment. Someone brought up old grievances about family gatherings and who paid for what. Another cousin mentioned a loan my aunt had never paid back. The whole thing spiraled into a referendum on my aunt's behavior over the years, with people sharing stories about times she'd been judgmental or cruel. My cousin, the one whose tuition I'd covered, finally broke her silence. She posted a long message confirming everything I'd said. She explained that she'd kept it secret at my request, but that I'd saved her future and her family from financial ruin. She said her mother had no right to mock me when I'd done more for their family than anyone else. She ended by saying she was grateful and ashamed that her mother had treated me this way. My aunt tried to backtrack. She posted an apology that was more defensive than genuine, claiming she'd been having a bad day and hadn't meant anything personal. She said she was grateful for what I'd done for her daughter, but that I shouldn't have kept it a secret because it made her look bad now. People called her out on that too, pointing out that she was somehow making my generosity about her embarrassment. The family group chat became a war zone. People were taking sides, bringing up decades-old arguments, and generally airing every piece of dirty laundry they'd been holding on to. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I muted most of the conversations and tried to focus on work, but the whole situation kept pulling me back in. By that evening, my aunt's husband called me. He apologized profusely, saying he'd had no idea I was the one helping them. He thanked me repeatedly and said his wife had been out of line. He admitted she'd been stressed about money for years and sometimes took it out on people who didn't deserve it. He said they needed to talk as a family and figure out how to move forward. I told him I appreciated the call, but that I needed some space from the whole mess. My mother came over that night with dinner. She sat me down and asked me to explain everything from the beginning. I walked her through the past 3 years, the decision to help my cousin, the choice to keep it quiet. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she hugged me for a long time. She said she was proud of me, but wished I'd trusted her enough to tell her. I explained it wasn't about trust, just about wanting to help without complications. She understood, even if she didn't fully agree with my approach. Over the next few days, the family argument continued to evolve. Some relatives reached out privately to thank me or express their support. Others stayed silent, probably unsure whose side to take. A few suggested we all move on and stop dwelling on it, as if public humiliation was something that could be quickly forgotten. My aunt eventually posted a more sincere apology. She admitted she'd been wrong to make the original post, and that she'd been dealing with a lot of stress and resentment she hadn't processed properly. She thanked me for helping her daughter and said she hoped we could eventually repair our relationship. I didn't respond publicly, but I did send her a private message saying I accepted her apology but needed time before we could have a real conversation. The aftermath was messy. Several relatives stopped speaking to my aunt. Family gatherings became awkward, with people choosing sides or trying too hard to pretend everything was normal. My cousin and I grew closer, bonding over the shared experience of being at the center of family chaos. She told me she felt guilty for causing the rift, and I reminded her that none of it was her fault. I'd made the choice to post those receipts, and I didn't regret it. What I did regret was that things had escalated so far. Part of me wished I'd just ignored my aunt's post, let it slide like I'd let so many other comments slide over the years. But another part of me felt a strange sense of relief. For years, I'd been the family member everyone felt comfortable looking down on, the one who'd struggled and never quite measured up in their eyes. They'd never known how far I'd come or what I'd accomplished because I'd kept it private. Now they knew. And more importantly, my aunt knew. She'd tried to publicly shame me, to paint me as entitled and useless, and instead she'd exposed herself as someone who didn't even know what was happening in her own daughter's life. The power dynamic had shifted, and everyone had seen it happen in real time. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since everything blew up, and the family dynamics are still settling into a new normal. My cousin graduated early last month, and the whole experience of attending her graduation ceremony was surreal. My aunt had invited me personally. She called about 2 weeks after the incident and asked if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, mostly because I was curious about what she wanted to say face to face. We met at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between our places, and sat down for what turned out to be a 2-hour conversation. She apologized again, more genuinely this time. She talked about how she'd been bitter for years, watching her finances struggle while other family members seemed to do fine. She'd assumed I was still the broke college kid who'd needed help, never considering that circumstances could change. She admitted she'd been jealous when she suspected someone was helping with her daughter's tuition but hadn't known who. The not knowing had eaten at her, made her feel like a failure as a mother. When she'd found out it was me, after years of her looking down on me, the embarrassment had been overwhelming. I listened to all of it and then told her something I'd been thinking about for weeks. I explained that her embarrassment wasn't my responsibility. I'd helped her daughter because I could and because it was the right thing to do, not to make anyone look bad. But her decision to publicly mock me, to try to tear me down in front of the whole family, that was a choice she'd made. And the consequences of that choice weren't something I could fix for her. She cried a little, asked if I could ever forgive her. I told her I already had, but that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean going back to the way things were. She nodded, said she understood, and thanked me again for everything I'd done for her daughter. The graduation was beautiful. My cousin looked radiant in her white coat, beaming as she walked across the stage. My aunt and her husband were there, along with most of our extended family. The atmosphere was cautiously optimistic, like everyone was trying to prove we could be normal again. During the reception afterward, my cousin gave a speech thanking everyone who'd supported her. When she got to me, she paused and her voice cracked. She said I'd given her more than money, that I'd given her a future she thought she'd have to give up on. She said she hoped to spend her career helping people the way I'd helped her. There wasn't a dry eye in the room, including mine. My aunt approached me after the speech. She didn't say much, just squeezed my hand and whispered that she was sorry again. I squeezed back and told her to focus on being proud of her daughter. This wasn't the day for old wounds. Update 2. 2 months after the graduation, things took an unexpected turn. My cousin finished her residency match and got placed at a prestigious hospital. The whole family was thrilled, celebrating her success like it was a collective victory. During the celebration dinner, she stood up and made an announcement. She'd been saving money from her part-time work throughout medical school, putting aside whatever she could. She said she wanted to start paying me back, even though I'd told her it was a gift. She'd opened an account and planned to make regular payments until she'd covered at least half of what I'd spent. I started to protest, but she held up her hand. She said it wasn't about the money. It was about showing me that my investment in her had meant something, that she took it seriously, that she wanted to honor what I'd done by paying it forward and also paying it back. I was touched, more than I expected to be. I told her we'd figure something out. Maybe she could put that money toward helping other students instead. She smiled and said we'd negotiate terms later, like a real contract. Everyone laughed, and the tension that had lingered for months finally seemed to dissipate. My aunt came up to me later that night, after most people had left. She told me she'd been in therapy, working through the bitterness and resentment she'd carried for years. She said her therapist had helped her understand that her reaction to my success wasn't really about me at all, but about her own feelings of inadequacy. She was learning to deal with those feelings in healthier ways. I appreciated her honesty, told her I was glad she was getting help and that I hoped she found peace with everything. She asked if we could try to rebuild our relationship slowly, maybe meet for coffee once a month, and just talk. I agreed, with the understanding that trust would take time. Those monthly coffee meetings have actually been good. We talk about normal things mostly, avoiding the drama and focusing on the present. She tells me about her work and her hobbies. I tell her about my business and my plans for the future. It's not perfect, but it's progress. The whole experience changed how I think about family and generosity. I learned that helping people in secret isn't always the noble choice it seems. Sometimes transparency is important, even if it's uncomfortable. And I learned that standing up for yourself, even when it causes conflict, can be the right thing to do. My family is different now. The hierarchy that existed before, with certain people holding all the power and others scrambling for approval, has shifted. People see me differently, treat me with more respect. And while I never wanted recognition, I won't lie and say it doesn't feel good to finally be seen for who I actually am, not who people assumed I was. Would I do anything differently if I could go back? Maybe I would have been more open from the start, let people know I was doing well instead of hiding it. But maybe not. The explosion, as painful as it was, cleared the air in a way that years of polite distance never could have. Sometimes families need a reckoning to move forward. My aunt still hasn't posted on social media much since the incident. When she does, it's mostly pictures of her garden or inspirational quotes about growth and change. No more cryptic posts about entitled family members. And every time my cousin accomplishes something new, my aunt makes sure to publicly celebrate her, always including a note about the people who helped make it possible. She never tags me specifically, but I know she's thinking about it. And that's enough. The story doesn't have a fairy tale ending where everything goes back to perfect, because it was never perfect to begin with. But it has an honest ending, where people learn something about themselves and each other. Where mistakes were made, consequences were faced, and growth happened anyway. I still have those receipts saved on my computer. Not because I plan to use them again, but because they're a reminder. A reminder that sometimes the right response to cruelty is truth, even when truth is uncomfortable. And a reminder that the best revenge isn't elaborate or dramatic. Sometimes it's just showing people exactly who you are and letting them deal with their own reactions. The family group chat is quieter now. When arguments start to brew, someone usually steps in to redirect before things escalate. We've all learned our lesson about letting conflict spiral out of control in public forums. And when someone needs help, people are more open about asking and offering. The culture of secrecy and judgment that existed before has started to crack, replaced by something more honest, if not entirely comfortable. That Wednesday morning that started with a cruel post and cold coffee ended up being a turning point, not just for me, but for my entire family. We're all still figuring out what comes next, but at least we're figuring it out with our eyes open and our cards on the table. And sometimes, that's the best you can hope for. If you'd like to see more stories like this, a gentle tap on the subscribe button would mean the world to us.